6:11, I don't know what each thing means, like. What do we?
Hey, well, it's 6 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started this meeting. If I could everyone to focus on me, focus on me.
I think you need to turn up. You need a whistle?
Hey, we're gonna get this meeting started. If I get everyone to relax, at ease. I'll get my army voice out. So we need to get moving. We got lots on the agenda tonight. Appreciate everybody being here. This is actually going to be a workshop meeting for tonight, not a city council meeting. We do have an agenda and we will follow it. And with that, I'll call this meeting to order. It's October 4th, 2022. We're in the mill in downtown Lake Stevens. This meeting is live as well as on Zoom and will later be published on our YouTube channel. So with that, I would ask everyone to rise and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Get a roll call, City Clerk.
Sure. Councilmember Daughtry.
Present.
Member Peterson.
Present.
Councilmember Frederick.
Present.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Present.
Councilmember Georgetown.
Present.
Councilmember Ewing.
Present.
Councilmember Tajik.
Okay, great. I don't think we need a motion to excuse Councilmember Tajik as it's not a council meeting, it's a workshop. Agreed, or do we want to go ahead and do so? Okay.
Fine.
All right, so with that, we'll move forward on an approval of the agenda. Something on the agenda, I want to make sure that the audience knows this is a workshop. It's an opportunity for council members to discuss the items that are on the workshop. We do not take citizens' comments, and we ask for the boos and yays from the audience to be minimized depending upon the subject. So with that, I would ask for an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, we have an agenda then, and let's move forward with some city department reports. Chief Aziza.
Thank you, Mayor. Here's council, it's a privilege to do some more promotions within the Lake Stevens Police Department. Adam? We have a great turnout today with families. We're very honored to have them here also. Sergeant Adam Bryant, he started his law enforcement career in 2010 with the Arizona Department of Corrections as a correction officer. In March of 2012, Adam started with Piedmont County Sheriff's Department. He was a field training officer, general instructor at the academy, advanced DUI training. He was on the task force and he was the department's phlebotomist, which he got to draw blood from people for DUIs, which is great. In 2017, Adam was lateral to the Lake Stevens Police Department. Adam holds the extra duties of the field training officer, patrol tactics instructor. He was a corporal and he's now the drone operator, one of two. Adam has been awarded the Officer of the Year with the department in 2020 and 2021. Adam works hard in the area of community interaction, partnerships, and contributions to the community. Most importantly, Adam's family tonight is here. His girlfriend Jessica, who's been together for over 7 years, and Jack's not here, which I'm excited. I wish he was here. And 5 years old. So Adam's girlfriend's gonna pin the badge onto him. Mayor, would you mind swearing him in? Can you stab it? I mean, just pin it.
So I will say Adam's been doing a great job for us, and you know when you reach the pinnacle of being a police officer, especially sergeant, when you consistently carry around a monster. So with that, would you raise your right hand? I, Adam Bryant, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington, the ordinance of the city of Lake Stevens, and the mission and regulations of Lake Stevens Police Department. And I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties as a Lake Stevens Police Sergeant according to law and the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Yeah, I'm gonna do these two together. So Jared was promoted in April, and now he's being transferred over to the investigation unit, which I'll explain here in just a second. I'm gonna read Jared's bio first. Jared started working with the Lake Stevens Police Department in 2005 as a volunteer intern while attending college at Everett Community College, pursuing the degree in criminal justice. After his internship, he was hired as a police cadet. Following the Frontier Village annexation in 2007, Jared was hired as a full-time commissioned police officer. He graduated from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy and spent 5 years of his career on patrol. During this time, he's a field training officer and participated in the Marine Patrol Program. In January 2012, Jared was assigned to the investigations unit as a detective. During Jared's time as a detective, he successfully completed numerous cases, participating in numerous task forces, and started the organization Digital Forensic Program. In May of 2020, Jared was assigned to Detective Corporal. Effective April 1st, 2022, Jared was promoted to Sergeant assigned to patrol. Effective October 1st, 2020, Jared was transferred to the Investigation Sergeant as a Detective Sergeant. In attendance is his wife Alyssa and soon 6-year-old daughter Lillian. She is. Mommy Jean. She's 6 now. That's why. I thought she'd have a birthday. Jared came out as a detective, was on patrol for a little while, loved patrol, had a hard decision, decided to go back into it to take over and help us rebuild up the program since our sergeant. So I'm excited to have him. Kristen Parnell. So Kristen is currently a detective with us, but she's stepping up to be the corporal within the unit. Kristen, in 2005, graduated from Eastern Washington University with a BA in Criminal Justice and Forensic Certificate. 2006, she graduated from Eastern Washington University and a BA in Psychology. 2013, she graduated from Seattle University with an MA in Criminal Justice. Kristen began her career in January 2014, working for the Washington State Department of Corrections as a correction officer in Monroe until January 2015. Kristen was hired in February 2015 by the Lake Stevens Police Department, graduating from the Basic Law Enforcement Academy and working patrol for 2 years. In 2017, Kristen transferred to the investigation unit where she is currently assigned. She is a member of the Snohomish County Interagency Child Abduction Response Team, ICAR, and a member of the Snohomish Multiple Agency Response Team, SMART, and the Internet Crimes Against Children, ICAC, many acronyms in law enforcement, task force. I thought the military was that. Most importantly, is her family, her wife, Liz Bradley, Elise back there with Logan, and Oliver. Oliver. Yes, but I congratulate Kristen and I really appreciate her stepping up and becoming the corporal to help Jared out as the unit gets going and we continue to do the successes that we have after investigation unit. Unfortunately, they've been very busy. I hate to say that in our community, but they have been very, very busy and they've really stepped up the place on numerous cases that have been happening. So, Mayor, you can come in and swear them in. Good. Hi, Jared.
Hi, Jared.
You solemnly swear or affirm
You solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington,
the Constitution and laws
the ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens,
of the ordinances of the city of Stevens,
and the mission and regulations
and the mission and regulations
of Lake Stevens Police Department.
of West Stevens.
I will faithfully and impartially perform
And I will faithfully and impartially perform
and discharge the duties
and discharge the duties
as a Lake Stevens Police Detective Sergeant
as a active sergeant
according to law
according to law
and to the best of my ability.
and to the
gonna do that.
Go take a break.
Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States, the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington, ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens, and the mission and regulations. Faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties as a Lake Stevens Police Detective according to law and best. While they're doing the walk, I would like to take a few minutes and talk about public safety.
Congratulations.
You know my background. you
Mayor,
know that
Mayor,
I,
will you grab that mic, just to make sure we get you on that?
You know that I make public safety priority number one for me, having been a law enforcement officer for 21 years. And today, watch your news, myself and fellow mayors created a 501c4 to take on public safety along with our business leaders. We've got some very detrimental policies going on in our state. The Blake decision, our lack of ability to pursue, not that we need to pursue, but when criminals know we can't pursue, well, then that emboldens them to further their crimes. So I'm proud to be a part of this coalition that we've put together, and it's our responsibility as mayors to make sure that we're fighting for the safety of our citizens, and we've got to start taking it to the legislature, and we hope and pray that our citizens are behind us on this one. So take a look at the news tonight, it'll be fun. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's move forward. The next item is there's no report on it, but if there's any questions from council out of the packet. You see none, we'll move forward. And then Aaron Halverson, can we introduce Kim? Yes, I'd be happy to. Let's do it.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Aaron Halverson. I'm the City Public Works Director, and I'm pleased to be here tonight to introduce Kim Klinkers. Kim is the new city engineer. She's a licensed civil engineer. She comes to us from the city of Monroe, where she worked as a civil engineer for was it 7 years? Okay. She led the design and construction of numerous street and utility capital projects in Monroe. Prior to joining the public sector, Kim worked for a large engineering firm in Bellevue in Seattle, designing transportation projects for Washoe Sound Transit. She wrote here that she graduated from the best college in the state, which is the University of Washington. She knows that I'm cool. So, with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, as a licensed professional engineer. An interesting tidbit about Kim, she grew up in Lake Stevens and graduated from Lake Stevens High School. She now lives in the Snohomish area with her husband and 2 kids, and she's looking forward to having a positive impact on our community. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So just so everyone knows, Friday mornings, I grab the public works director, city administrator, and randomly someone else, and we wander the city looking at projects, doing different things. And when we realized what we needed to fill what is now Kim's position, we had that discussion in the truck, and unsurprisingly, when we were looking for talent, 2 people within the truck immediately said, there's this really sharp person in Monroe. We should maybe go find him. And so Kim's here because of that discussion. So, well, a lot of reasons. We're just talking. So let's move forward with our Parks Director, Sarah, or so with an update.
Thank you. So in your packet, you'll see an update for Frontier Heights Phase 2. I've provided the most recent layout and conceptual plans for the Frontier Heights. It's basically built out about 10% right now. We made notes about some things we need to change and how we're moving forward with public process and solidifying that for engineering. And in the description, it specifies what the project covers as far as Fields for Youth, as well as estimated costs and grant funds received. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I guess kind of an obvious question here. I see phase 2 is currently estimated at 1.9 million, and you've indicated there's about $850,000 that have been allocated to this. Do we have construction is anticipated to occur in 2024? How do we go about paying for the difference?
So in the budget, we propose capital projects every year. And so this is one of the line items to consider for 2023 as well as 2024. Parks does our best to continually reach out for all grant resources to minimize the cost to taxpayers. But currently that is all that we have secured.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Sarah? Ken, I don't want to forget you up there. Okay, great. Sarah, thank you for your report. With that, we're going to move to discussion items. I'm going to hand the.
I'm so sorry. You know what? He's back. Okay, I have to apologize.
Okay. I'm going to hand the floor over to Council President Ewing to run the discussion items portion of the meeting.
Director Leviton, if you could just provide a brief overview of your staff report there, if you don't mind, that you presented, or do we want to, as a council, just go over that? Either way.
How about both?
What?
How about both?
All right. David, if you just give us a brief overview and then we'll turn that into discussion.
Yeah, so I was going to give a brief PowerPoint. I can also just give an overview of the board either way.
I did want to say before you do that, thank you so much for the information that was provided. That was very helpful and very detailed, and it was very helpful for me.
Okay, yeah, so I'm happy. I have about 7 slides that kind of is an overview of the staff report. Should just take a few minutes and then we can kind of launch into the discussion. All right, so we are here tonight to discuss the short-term rentals code amendments. It was last before the council on September 13th when the public hearing was initiated. At the conclusion of that meeting, the council opted to continue the public hearing to allow for additional discussion at this workshop. So as far as the purpose of tonight, we wanted to just provide a very high-level overview of the process to date. Provide some additional context and information to what was provided in the packet in response to questions asked by council members on September 13th, and then to identify next steps, including whether another work session is needed before we continue the public hearing that was initiated on September 13th. I'm not going to go into real detail on this, but the Planning Commission did hold 3 work sessions back between December and March before moving on to their public hearing in April of 2022. There was public comments provided kind of throughout that process, including 6 that were provided at the public hearing, generally in favor of the draft that was provided or prepared by staff based on input from the Planning Commission. At that meeting on April 20th, the public hearing, they did consider an amendment to allow for unhosted rentals. Ultimately, that motion did not pass, and what was approved and is included in attachment 1 did not allow for unhosted rentals. Just kind of at a very high level, some of the common issues that were identified in the public comments during both the planning commission process and then the continued forward into some of the public comments that were provided to the city council, including on September 13th, was a preference for a hosted environment, concerns about noise and neighborhood compatibility, and then also concerns about parking availability, especially kind of in established detached single-family residential neighborhoods. So just a little bit about the city council process. So in advance of that September 13th public hearing, the council did hold a work session on May 3rd, as well as an additional work session on June 7th. Had some comments on the draft, the recommendation from the planning commission, asked for some additional information from staff, primarily at that June 7th work session. And at the conclusion of that June 7th work session, the council opted to form a 3-person subcommittee to explore some potential revisions to the code language to try to simplify it a bit. And then just a little bit on what occurred at the September 13th meeting. Before we get more into the subcommittee process, just at a very high level, the council opened the public scheduled, staff noticed, and the city council opened the public hearing for this code amendment on September 13th. Heard a staff presentation, heard comments from the public, and then deliberated for a bit before deciding to continue the public hearing to allow for this work session to get some additional information and to have some additional deliberation before the continuance of the public hearing occurs. So a little bit about the subcommittee process, which was provided in a little bit more detail in the staff report. So that 3-person subcommittee is comprised of council members Ewing, Frederick, and Jorstad. They held their first meeting back on June 16th. They provided an early code draft to staff, as well as had a number of questions for staff about things like parking, fees, funding, licensing. Direct Community Development Director Wright, in response to kind of some of those conversations that were had in the middle to end of June, prepared a memo and prepared an updated draft that responded to several of the recommendations and several of the suggestions from the subcommittee. And that's included in attachment 6, the actual code language. The subcommittee then continued to work over summer of 2022 and ultimately came up with the code language that's included in attachment 8. And just some kind of high level information about that code language. It allows for unhosted rentals if a number of other provisions are met. So it details licensing requirements. It details a lot of things that were discussed by staff and at the last public hearing, and that are included within the staff report as well as in the code language and attachment 8. One of the other major points of conversation at that September 13th public hearing was a request for additional context as far as the scope of police calls for service and incident reports as they pertain specifically to homes that have short-term rentals there. So staff went ahead and renewed their public records request, updated that slightly to run through September 13th to cover all of summer 2022. Of the 22 properties that staff was able to identify addresses for, 12 properties had incident reports during that approximately a little bit over 4-year period between June of 2018, September of 2022. Staff went through and reviewed all of the incident reports. There were about 80 incident reports. About 2/3 of those were from 2 specific properties, and could only find one specific reference where it was very clear that it was specifically related to a short-term rental or Airbnb. Did a number of searches for different terms, VRBO, vacation rental, short-term rental, and only found one where it was very clear that it was specifically related to a short-term rental. And so while this is not in any means a comprehensive list, or we know that there are likely short-term rentals that we might not be aware of, at least as far as these data points, it did not point to a strong correlation between short-term rentals and higher calls for service. So that's based just on the police data that we were able to look at. So kind of moving forward, our questions for council tonight. One, are there specific questions about any of the materials that were provided in the packet? And is there additional information that you need from staff? Do council members have specific revisions to the code language that they would like to recommend to the subcommittee that staff can make in advance of the continuation of the public hearing? And do council members want to schedule an additional work session, or are they ready to schedule the continuation of the public hearing? And if you'll remember, at the end of the September, or as part of the September 13th public hearing, public comment was closed. Should the public comment portion be reopened? And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you. I'm looking at how complex this process is that the people who want to use short-term rental have to go through. Do we have personnel, staff here in the city in place to handle all of this? It's very complicated. That was my question for one. And I do hope that we give the citizens a chance to speak again. Those are the two things I would say.
Yeah, so we do, I mean, we've identified, as far as on the licensing side of things, we do have staff to handle that as part. It would be a type 1, basically treated as a type 1 land use permit, kind of an administrative permit. As far as on the code enforcement, that was something that was discussed at the last one. It would obviously depend on the scope of code enforcement calls. We believe that we have adequate police staffing. I'll let Chief Bazzizo speak to that. But as the data showed, we didn't see a much higher correlation. So kind of at a very high level, we believe that we have adequate staffing.
Any other questions or comments? Sure.
Yeah, David, I have a couple of comments here and just hopefully the other council members would agree with me, but looking at this packet of information from page 10 through whatever it is, I'm assuming attachment number 1 is page 10 and 11 and 12. It doesn't indicate that, but I'm assuming that's what that pertains to. Is that correct?
So yeah, that would be, it would be attachment 1.
So maybe in the future it'd be helpful if we labeled the attachments so that we could maybe figure some things out. Attachment number 2, I'm guessing is page 13 and 14, which I don't really quite understand what this is about because it's got a bunch of hand scribbled notes on it. Is that the early subcommittee code draft?
Yeah, I can speak to that. That is the earliest draft provided to me by the subcommittee, and the notes on it were my notes during our meeting for some places to make some changes, and then I inadvertently put some calculations on that for something unrelated. So that's the document.
So page 14 is what?
14 is also the nuisance section of the code that the subcommittee considered that was attached.
And it's, I don't know if you folks on this, but it seems like there's duplicate information in here is regarding the hotel lodging tax and so forth. I mean, it seems like there's repetitive pages of the same thing. So I guess I would, for ease and efficiency, if you could maybe label these things as the attachments so they can kind of correspond with what we're looking at so that we kind of know, and rather just a helpful hint, maybe I'd appreciate that.
So what you're saying, Gary, is when it's printed, you don't see the attachments, but
No, there's.
yeah, but
no-
online. Okay, tracking.
I mean, there's nothing.
Yeah. Right, we can figure that out.
So I don't know, Gary, are you?
Well, I guess the point of our conversation tonight is my feeling is how the subcommittee came to justify the substantial changes that they made in their draft ordinance. And I guess I'm not really seeing that in this information, other than the conversation regarding, or the correspondence regarding the revenue guide. And, you know, I understand that, but I guess I'm looking for some guidance as to why the subcommittee felt it important to water down what the planning commission had recommended. And I hope there's some discussion on that.
Well, I'll just open with, I don't believe the subcommittee is accountable to any single city council member. But I do also want to thank David for putting together his staff report. And I'd like to go further and actually add some clarity to the documents that you have. There was very specifically a challenge to provide all of the documents. And some of those documents are overlapping and duplicative. And what you see in the packet is exactly what was requested in the last meeting. Transparency, all of the documents that we use to make those decisions. And, you know, I want to continue. I took a lot of time to really reflect on what I perceived as an apparent challenge to things like transparency and integrity that I felt were pretty inappropriate. But that being said, this is an incredibly complex topic, and a lot of honest work went into looking at this ordinance and really did take to heart all of the public comment that we received at the last meeting. And there were some things that we came away with, that I came away with. As we looked to simplify this ordinance, there were things that you don't read because they exist in other ordinances. And sound, which I think is one of the central issues here that we're talking about, parties and loud noises, especially late at night. We specifically don't have something addressing sound in this ordinance because it's already addressed elsewhere in ordinance. And there were a few other instances of that where we looked at things, and in the interest of making something that was easily digestible, where we knew that there were issues that are already covered in other areas of our code or under code enforcement, we simply didn't duplicate those things by restating them in this draft ordinance. And I can see, I certainly took away from the last meeting that what we could have done better, and perhaps what we should do, is call those areas out. I think it'd be very simple to add language in there that specifically says, in regards to noise, refer to this existing ordinance, because it's already there. Or in other areas where we have existing ordinances, to call those things out, so that it is clear that there are things there already in place. The absence of it in writing certainly wasn't an omission of the importance of the topic. Another thing that came to light, and I had an opportunity to speak about this a little earlier today with a colleague, was the good neighbor placarding that we suggested. And in the work, we had the draft and we talked about the importance of calling out things in that placard, noise and behavior and parking, all of those things, along with contact information, both for code compliance and for the property owners being requirements of that. But we didn't spell it out in detail in the draft ordinance. And I could see that as certainly a low-hanging fruit for improvement of the ordinance document. So those 2 points, I think, are there. They really resonated with me with the public comment that I heard. There'd certainly be things that I'd be willing to work on additional language or work with staff on additional language. We did envision the placarding actually being something that would be under city control. It'd be part of the permitting process to ensure that there was consistency in that behavior. So I would start with those comments. Just to have transparency on where we all are in this process.
I think to add to your comments, Sean, but the reason the subcommittee was formed was that once the Planning Commission's ordinance was presented, 6 of the 7 of us had concerns about the original ordinance. And there was robust discussion amongst us about how best to proceed. And the council and the mayor made the decision to form a subcommittee to look deeper at the bigger picture. And I think that's what we did. I think we took the ordinance that was provided by the Planning Commission. We looked at the state RCW that oversees short-term rentals. We looked at all of the city's short-term rental ordinances that were suggested and additional short-term rentals to really look at what is best for the city of Lake Stevens, the entire city of Lake Stevens. So it wasn't an attempt to water down anything. It was an attempt to listen to our own council, listen to the feedback, take a step back and create something that was a fit for our city. That was honestly starting point. The tourist homes ordinance that we have, I think we can all agree is outdated and doesn't really pertain. And I think we've all agreed that now that we have, or are on our way to having something that is in writing, it gives us the data that we need moving forward to register and license those short-term rentals, to have a better sense of what those addresses are, and to come back and look at this. If indeed this doesn't fit the bill, if there are things that we need to tweak because we didn't know what we didn't know, we amend ordinances all the time. That's absolutely something that I think this is a fluid document, but this is where we have decided that it makes sense to start for our city.
Well, I have a different opinion. Obviously, we have a planning commission recommendation that had a series of standards in it. And we had public testimony that was overwhelming in support of those things. And yet we have a subcommittee that felt differently. I respect that, that's fine. But typically a subcommittee is formed, you issue a subcommittee report and the reasons for why you did what you did or recommended. And that was the basis. We didn't have that information. So that's why I asked for it last week or 2 weeks ago, to kind of get some background as to why you folks are recommending what you're recommending. And I just, it's kind of amazing to me. We have overwhelming public comment in regards to this. And in my opinion, it's totally been disregarded. And I just, I guess I am questioning the wisdom of the subcommittee, because I'm looking at some things here. Whatcom County, they don't allow STRs in the Lake Whatcom watershed or shoreline areas. So I guess how can you use that as a comparable jurisdiction? Everett was used as a comparable jurisdiction for short-term rentals. My goodness, Everett's comparable to Lake Stevens? Not even close. We've had various recommendations from the citizens out here to look at some different things. And I think it's been kind of pushed aside. And, I guess I'll be on the losing side of this boat, but at the same time, I don't, the question was brought up by Council President Ewing, why are we discussing this? Every recreational community in probably the United States has had a problem with this issue. And the issue was try to get out in front of it. So that's what we're trying to do. And by having a fluid ordinance, I think you're just asking for some problems later on that we'll be back addressing again.
Let me be clear. I don't think the ordinance is fluid. I think the process is fluid. So I think if and when there
I
are
thought
the
you
problems
said we
that
could-
people are afraid of,
I thought you said we could revisit this.
we can revisit any ordinance.
Isn't that fluidity?
Not the ordinance, the process. That's our job.
Well, I take issue with the subcommittee's report. It's not an issue of honesty, it's an issue of transparency. Like I said, typically a subcommittee issues a report based on the recommendations, why they made the recommendations and so forth. That didn't happen. Now we have that information, kind of going through it. I just, again, I don't know why or the motivation as to why the planning commission's recommendation is not being adhered to. I guess in my view, why do we have a planning commission? I mean, they're kind of, I've been to a couple of planning commission meetings and they're of the feeling, why do we bother? And so I think we're going to have to address that with them because there's some folks there that are feeling very disenfranchised. And it's not one or two planning commission members, it's the majority of the planning commission. So we need to figure out some better lines of communication with them and get past this. So.
Any other discussion from council?
The only discussion that I would recommend is that you brought forth, the subcommittee has brought forth a recommendation and that city or the public should have the opportunity to comment on that in public forum. So. So we can continue this public hearing and have public comment.
All right, Councilmember Dickinson, is there any, I've heard from you?
Well, I'm listening and I think that I want to thank those who are on our little committee here for your hard work. I think the people of Lake Stevens deserve us to listen to them, but also to do the best we can. And Planning Commission has done a great job as well. Maybe we can somehow come together and make this work. The end of the game, how is it going to be being here in the city? Are we going to be at peace out at near these short-term rentals, or are we going to be wishing we'd done something different? It really needs to be resolved, that's for sure. I would love us to be that place where it gets resolved and people say, oh, we should do it like Lake Stevens does it. That's what I dream of right here. So I appreciate your hard work. I do. And I just think we need to soldier on. I hope that we can come up with a solution and give the folks of Lake Stevens a chance to speak again, which of course we probably will. That's really all I can say.
All right, thank you.
Sorry.
Councilmember Daughtry, did you have something I didn't see? We don't want to omit you.
Well, I would just say that in the last 12 years, we have been at loggerheads with the Planning Commission 4 times, where we changed what they brought to us. It's not unheard of that we have changed due to it being our responsibility, even though they did great work. The council has not agreed with them 4 different times to change the language of an ordinance. I'm not saying that's a good reason for doing this one. That's not the point. The point is this happened before. I'm still thinking about this ordinance. I'm not ready to make a decision on it. The main point, I guess, it's not for, it's for everybody in the city. So this, is 40,000 people, not a few local people that come to our council meetings. Understand their concerns, definitely. So those are the kinds of things we've got to make a decision on. So I'm looking forward to hearing public testimony again and try to get this taken care of.
Thank you. All right, so what's Councilmember Frederick has made some specific requests or proposals. So any feedback on Councilmember Frederick's thoughts? So to refresh, I guess, if we need that.
Okay. What I suggested, and it really was based out of feedback in the public hearing. There was specifically the issue of noise. And we talked about that in the subcommittee, and we specifically made the decision not to add new language because it already exists in our existing ordinances. But the absence of it gives the perception that we didn't consider it, or that we removed it or watered it down. We could add language in that points to that existing ordinance so that there's clarity that that issue is part of the ordinance, even though it exists somewhere else. Additionally, another thing that I heard that was very clear, and you know, we talked about it. I mean, I think we verbalized kind of the things that would go on this good neighbor placard. We talked about being good hosts, keeping your area clean, keeping the noise down, parking, the contact information, but we didn't specify it in the ordinance. So I think that's another area that I heard from the public that would be really easy to fix. It also adds clarity to the ordinance to put things in place to set expectations. And we,
Oops, sorry, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and we talked about actually the placards actually being provided by the city is a requirement to make sure that there was consistency with where this thing was going to be placed in the house, and it would be visible, and that it wouldn't be something that individuals would be changing or coming up with their own solution. So I think that's something else that we can put in the ordinance that clarifies things, that gives some specific instruction. And if there's a need for code enforcement, then it also gives some clarification, some guidance, and frankly, some teeth to our code enforcement staff when they're out and about evaluating these things, because they won't be able to say, I didn't know, because it'll be posted.
And just to follow up on that, the state RCW is very clear about what needs to be contained in that document. And so
Right.
we didn't include it because it felt duplicative to have it in two places, but we could reference the state RCW as well and make sure that that's clear to.
So
owners
just so
and
I
renters.
understand that, sorry.
It's okay.
So a good neighbor policy, and Greg, you might jump in on this, would that be codified? And so if you didn't adhere to the good neighbor policy, that could be a citable offense?
Could be a violation.
Yeah, you could make that a requirement, and if a license holder was violating those conditions, they could be subject to having their license revoked.
Exactly.
So is there anything, I'm just trying to figure out how this gets extrapolated into other areas. So if there's a so is there anything within the good neighbor policy that wouldn't already be in Lake Stevens code? My concern is, could someone cite good neighbor policy within an STR ordinance on just their normal neighbor that would be outside our current ordinances?
The way that the code is constructed right now, the good neighbor policies are specific to short-term rentals, and it's only included inside this ordinance, this section of code, so it can't be applied outside of that for general, code enforcement.
Okay, I don't have a problem with good neighbors being good neighbors. I'm just trying to make sure that this doesn't leak into other areas that then we get problematic.
Yeah, well, since the people are requesting a license to do something
Then they have to adhere to
special,
the good neighbor policy.
then, right, so there's a basis to make that a requirement that is not otherwise a requirement in the code for everyone. owns a home here, her property.
And it definitely does not have to be called a good neighbor guidelines. I mean, it can be short, I mean, it can be more bureaucratic, short-term rental proprietor guidelines. I mean, it can be something that specific if that creates, we were just trying to create some language that would give someone the sense and the gravity of what we're asking of them. You get to do this business, and in return, you need to be a good steward, a good neighbor, and you think about that as an owner.
And President, if I may ask one more question.
Yes.
On the draft ordinance in was this paragraph? C1. Where it talks about, it's B1. No more than 2 short-term rentals may be operated by an individual, married couple, business interests, or corporate entity within the city. What stops a large corporation from coming in and creating multiple LLCs with 2 rentals under each one? Is there language we can do there?
You're wanting to address the concern that basically people are going to be buying houses or properties to
Circumvent.
purposes of short-term.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily concerned about individual people. I'm more concerned about large businesses who do this and buy, 10, 15 houses in a new subdivision and STR. So this would allow them to do, they bought 10 houses, 5 LLCs, and you would still be able to do that.
Well, I suppose we can strike some language that if it's corporate ownership or the same parties are forming these different LLCs, they're going to be counted as one. It's not, if that's what we want to do, I think we can press some language to address that issue.
Council President
Kim.
I think what the mayor is bringing up is a very real concern. That would be incredibly hard for the staff to have to go track. And the fact that a corporation can use LLCs has been well documented for all kinds of different things. It's really easy to get an LLC. It's really easy to just continue to do it and continue to do it. It's really hard to track who the owners are. So I think that that's a real concern, and I don't think we have the staff capacity to be watching for that. There are jurisdictions that we've been led to by some of the citizens to see that has actually happened in different areas, Salt Lake City for one, and or outside Salt Lake City for one, and a couple of others that I read up on where they are doing that. And so the housing stock is going down for those kinds of things. So that is a concern. I don't know that the subcommittee talked about that. There, like you said, there's not really anything in here that says that, but I'm sure that they thought about it. I'm hoping they thought about it. But the LLC angle that was brought up by a citizen last time is a very real possibility. And I don't think that we have staff time to actually take care of that.
Kim, thank you. Just to respond, the subcommittee did talk through that, and I would be really interested if there is language that we could add that would ensure that that didn't happen, or if we could change the language in some way. I think that was the intent of the subcommittee, and I don't want to speak for either of you. Okay, I'm gonna speak for you.
Yes.
Was that's not what we want, and obviously, and I don't think anyone in our city wants to see that happen. So any language we can include that would.
All right, well, I can certainly work it for us.
That'd be great.
His team to come up with some options that you might want to consider, and we can take a look at those and decide how effectively they could be enforced.
Yeah, so that, Greg, my concern would be to make sure that they provide the maximum protection while limiting staff's time would be my preference. And I'm confident we can come up with something that would make that happen. So I agree with Angie, that was absolutely the intent, is to limit that to 2 and not the valid concerns that were shared that someone could circumvent that. So thank you for bringing that up. Mayor, did you have any?
That's all I got.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I concur with Councilmember Frederick. I appreciate you bringing up those two issues. And I would, my ask, I guess, can we go back to the list, David, of the PowerPoint that you had up there? Just want to make sure that we provide appropriate direction for staff. That we provide, and Russ was part of the conversations that we had with at least one meeting, and I appreciate all the input that was provided there to help us with the things that we didn't know, or but if we can address the issue of the areas, for example, noise complaints and other things that are already identified in the code, that we can call those out specifically. And then if you could provide the good neighbor guidelines, as noted by the mayor, none of those would be specific to the short-term rental code, and those will be provided by the city at the time of licensure and displayed at a location that's reasonably prominent within the residence. Any other feedback that we want for staff? We have 3 items that be provided for staff's attention.
And for me.
Okay, hearing none. Thank you for all those that have provided their input and and I guess the last thing, that the consensus, I believe, I concur that once that information is provided by the planning department, that we can reopen this for public comment. That sounded like that's, I see head nods. Is there anyone who opposed that? So hearing none, I concur with that. I believe we should open that back up for public comment.
So with that, as we look at the agenda, this is supposed to be on an action item for next week. Russ, you see us push that? Yeah, okay.
So first action meeting in November is probably.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you to everyone who provided input and assistance with that. And I think especially Chief Bazillos for your record staff, for I know that was not an easy undertaking to pull that data. But thank you to them for pulling that data. It was helpful. Let's move on to Parks and Recreation priorities.
So just for clarification, are we wanting to include this public hearing to the meeting in November, or simply renotice public hearing once we get a revised draft proposal?
I think continue the public hearing. Council had left the public hearing open. Planning Manager Levitan just mentioned we might be able to get it as early as October 25th, but so that would be the soonest. The latest would be that meeting in November. So I'd say let's get the draft and we'll put it out on the planning agenda.
Greg, given it's a continuation, does it meet the 10-day notice requirement again?
No, not if we
Continue it.
if we continue it, but we need to be sure to get the draft proposal on time. You would. So I'm thinking that because of the delay, suggest if the draft proposal together, we notice with the draft proposal with the changes.
Would it be cleaner? Would it be cleaner to end the public comment and begin a new public comment period with the new
there-
draft?
Right, there would, yes, when we renotice, when we notice up the public hearing on the revised draft, that'll be an opportunity for people to come to the meeting and make public comment based on what they see and know what's being proposed.
So but it's still a continuation and not a new.
No, it'd be not a continuation. it'd be
Okay.
a new-
I think that feels cleaner.
You
Yeah.
just
Do it fresh.
reopen the
Yes.
public comment Period to get oral comment and receive written comment after the draft. is
Yes, yes.
So I just wanted to reiterate for the public tonight that it will not be before October 25th. It will not be, if I'm hearing you correctly, not before October 25th. That would be the earliest. It would be what? Yes, yep. Yep.
All right, thank you for that clarification. All right, move on to item B, Parks and Recreation priorities. Sarah.
So is this on? Can you guys hear me through the mic?
Yes.
Going to assume so. Okay, so Parks and Rec priorities, I know this was placed on the agenda by the council. I believe that this was to be a discussion by the council. And so I didn't prepare anything specific. I'm happy to speak in my mind about what our priorities are, but I thought this might have been a council. So I'm here for questions, to answer, whatever I do.
Right.
Can I just give her applause? I just want to give her applause. Can I?
You can give her applause.
This, I'm hearing about Ms. Garceau everywhere, that people are so impressed with her. And so that's all I have to say. Good job. Keep going. Do it some more, okay? You're making her shine. Really appreciate it.
We've got a great team. It's all the team.
No, it's all.
Yes, of course.
Sarah, so you just mentioned your view of some of the priorities for the Parks Department. Maybe you could expand upon that a little bit.
Yeah, so we're really early in. I am now on week 8, I believe, if I'm still counting accurately. And so at this point, I've become very familiar with city policies and all my staff, what their strengths and weaknesses are, how we need to train, where our gaps are. At this point, we have not had time to do full park inspections, which would include playground inspections. After we do those, we'll be able to articulate 5-year plans. What needs to be priority? Is it safety? Is it ADA? Structural type things to bring them up to code. We have to balance all of the big projects that we have going on as well. We haven't had a fair chance to evaluate all of the locations that the city manages and owns, in addition to HOAs, school districts. What recreational opportunities are out there? What does the community need? And until we can fairly start evaluating that, it's really hard to say, what does the community need? What does the city need versus what does it have? And so through the next few weeks, that's what we have to build out. I like to do things off of data and off of talking to the community, surveys and that interaction. I don't want to arrive to a department and say, this is what you need, because I'm not part of your community, or I haven't been prior to now. So we'll get there. But for us, some of the immediate things that I can see is that we will need to fix several things as far as maintenance aspects, as far as infrastructure. So you can look at facilities, minimizing vandalism, making sure all of our playgrounds are up to code and have all of those parts properly replaced. Those are the things that immediately hit me. We need to set a plan for how often do we mow? When are we applying fertilizer? How are we taking care of weed management, properly watering, but not over watering, and balancing all of those? Where can we remove vegetation where it just simply shouldn't be growing? It'll help minimize your hours for labor for continually manually pulling weeds when you just eliminate that vegetative bed altogether. So those, as an overview, are what we've talked about internally. So far, we have been building up tools and equipment to make sure that the staff can be as efficient and effective as possible. You can double the amount of staff, but if you still don't have all of the tools in place, you're just treading water. And so those are the basic steps we've taken and where we're going.
Thank you. And a related note, it's been kind of quiet, and this isn't really a parks question, but it kind of is. Has there been any discussion with the regional athletic facility, tourism location that was on the table here months ago, and a determination?
Yeah, so there, Russ, you want to jump on that, or you want me to?
So, yeah, we've had lots of conversations with the Economic Alliance and Snohomish County Sports and Tourism. And in their citing process, they had talked about releasing an RFI where people could go out and make some proposals to try and cite this location. As they worked through the process, they selected a site which was in the city of Marysville, and then the RFI is going to be for individuals to apply for that location, to develop that location, not to open it up for another regional search. So right now, Lake Stevens is not in contention.
I don't think I heard that correctly, Russ. You said Lake Stevens was not?
Is not in contention
Okay.
for a regional sports facility.
That's been finalized?
I think it's pretty final, yeah.
So
That's too bad.
the site they chose is where current Public Works is in Marysville.
They would
Crazy
demo
site.
the site.
It's a, I will say this publicly, it's
It's
a
in a flood-
horrible site.
It's in a floodplain.
It's a horrible site. The traffic will be horrendous. It already is on a weekend. It's a horrible site.
I would agree with you.
And to go along with that, I think that just means even more so, that we need to go to the county and get Caballero put into city inventory so that we can run our own destiny on this, because that was a horrible decision. And I'm saying that publicly for
Okay.
anybody and everyone that you take here.
You kind of sugarcoated that? Could
No,
you-
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it all.
So what would that take for us to put that into our inventory? What would that process look like?
So as we've spoken with county in the past, one of the main things they wanted to see was our Public Works Department up and running. And we're there.
Parks Department,
What did I say?
Public
Public
Works.
Works.
We got one of those two and a Parks Department. Super talented Parks Department director. So I think, what I would like to see out of Sarah's in the next couple months is a good 5-year plan. And then we take that 5-year plan to the county and say, why don't you give this to us in our inventory so we can control our destiny on it.
All right, any other thoughts for our Parks Director?
Keep up the great work.
Yeah.
I guess I would say, I appreciate that this is on the agenda and that it's a city council discussion, but now that we have a parks director, I really trust you to come back to us with your expertise and your assessment and give us some guidance around the direction that you see we need to go as a city. And I think that would be a great starting point for us to then kind of have those discussions and make those decisions. So look forward to what you bring to us.
I think the intent is to, with her being new, and this is part of why I put this on the agenda, is that with her being new, we don't want to have her get far down the field and then have us say, actually, we had a different view of what we wanted to do, different priorities. And so if we had something that we wanted to put forward that we thought were priorities, I know for me, I've shared some of mine with her and I'll share them now publicly. One, we need to make sure that there is equity and access for our parks. We have a park, we should not put in a park, for example, Frontier Heights. There should be no substandard installations. There should be maintenance plans in place. It certainly gives the appearance of inequity given socioeconomic locations. And I don't believe that that's appropriate for a city of any size, especially ours. And that certainly looks like the case with Frontier Heights. And I know you've done a great job of addressing some of those things with your first 8 weeks. So thank you for that. The second part is we want to maintain what we've already spent millions of dollars investing in. And we need to have a plan. We need to have a maintenance plan. And I would like to see that posted on a website so that I can just refer people to a website instead of saying, how come this park isn't being maintained, or how come this walkway has 3-foot tall weeds or whatever, that there's a plan in place. And I want to make sure that we have appropriate staffing. And so that's specifically for this budget cycle with the new Parks Department. You should be set up for success, and we need to set you up for success by making sure you have the tools in terms of power, manpower. I don't know what the politically correct term is for that. And also that you have the equipment that you need. I believe in watching staff work that they don't have adequate equipment. Based on my experience in landscaping industry, that they need to have the best equipment to maximize their efficiencies. And lastly, I've been especially impressed with our Parks and Recreation Board folks. They're an impressive lot, and I've told them specifically I want them to provide maximum input and create a synergy with the department and with the city, with you and your staff, to make sure that we are taking full advantage of their expertise and joining their expertise with yours. So I guess I'm moving off into a little bit into the weeds into kind of the smart cities recap. I understand. Yes, with the funding sources, I understand that the council had some pretty significant discussions with folks about getting some funding for our city with regard to Shorewood and other parts of the city. And so any available resources and connections that we have with a state, county and federal representatives to secure funding for our city to maximize the value that we have for the city. And I appreciate the staff members that went to DC and let their voices be heard. And those that are contacting our county and state officials, I know the city team, the mayor and his staff are also doing great work with that. So I'd like to see us maximize our return on that investment. So and I guess, yeah, those are, I guess, a few things that I have shared in conversations, and I just want to make it public for the record for the sake of transparency. So, you know, that everyone's aware of what's going on. Is there anything else? I mean, I really kind of shared a lot there. But I too, go on, Mary, I've heard positive things, Sarah, about you and your efforts and your interpersonal skills and your listening and your organization. And so I look forward to hearing continued good things from you and your staff.
Thank you.
So I guess along with Angie's point too, you are the expert, and we look forward to hearing from you what your vision is. And so hopefully the timing is going to work for you to be able to provide that information to us so we can include whatever information you need for this budget cycle.
Absolutely. And you'll notice through budget cycle that we didn't make any drastic changes in our department, just being so new and not having a chance to evaluate yet. I didn't want to ask for stuff without having the data behind it. And so we definitely want to make sure that we're also set up for success. But if we're having any issues as we progress and set all of these standards, I think we'll definitely be speaking to finance director and coming back with mid-year stuff if it is needed at that time. So I just didn't want to surprise you when you look at the request that it's pretty standard for this year.
Okay, well, absent a maintenance plan for public works and parks, I don't know that there'd be any allocations, but that would be helpful. Thank you. All right. Anything else from Sarah? Thank you. All right, Barb or Anya, who would like to take the lead on this?
It's going to be me today. So good evening, council. We have got a series of presentations for you tonight, all within the budget theme. And Barb will help me out if needed, I think. But the first thing we're going to talk about today is the strategic staffing plan. And for time's sake, we're going to try to go through these slides fairly quickly. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to look at them in advance. And Kelly is going to be running through the slides for me. So I'll let her know when to go next, just in case I need to pull up any other information on my laptop. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on the strategic staffing plan and give you guys a recap of why we do this every year. And Kelly, if you could go to the next slide. So during the council retreat back in 2020, the council requested strategic staffing plans to be conducted to assess what the city needs are. And so every year since then, we've come back right around this time, usually during the mini retreat. And we talk about the strategic staffing plan for the next, usually few years, up to 5 years. So we meet, HR meets with each department director, with the city administrator and the mayor. And we discuss, some questions on what are the needs of the department, what's succession planning look like, what about upcoming retirements, anything that's foreseeable in the future as far as those items, and we build their staffing plan, collaboratively. So moving forward, this will continue to be an annual project for us. This gives you, it's very small to see. So we did provide you guys some printed copies so you could see a little bit better. This is our current organizational chart, just effective, I believe, last week. So I think the police has already been busy making some assignment changes and promotions, which might not be included on this, but this is, as of last week, our city org chart with positions. And on the next slide, Kelly, this just breaks down the number of FTEs that are funded in each department. And total right now, we are funded at 120.6. And it also, I'm showing you here the vacancies that we currently have in each department. And we aren't really down a lot of positions, which is great. Mostly in the police department, unfortunately. So before I hand it over to the chief is going to go first. Each department head is going to briefly go over their strategic staffing plan. We've asked them to spend 5 minutes or less and really focus on their 2023 requests. And I would like to also have you keep in mind that this staffing plan is taken with a little bit of a grain of salt, because if the sewer assumption does happen in the near future, then the staffing plan would change. And we have discussed that, with each department head on how that would impact them. But these staffing plans, just to be clear, are as if we continue as a city without the sewer district. So without further ado, Chief.
For the 2023, our additional request is a record specialist to handle public request from the public for body worn cameras due to complexity. Full deployment started October 1st, 2022. Currently, we have over 1,009 videos in the system, increasing by an average of 55 videos per day that require maintenance, retention, and destruction. Redaction of the body worn footage for a records request has been taking anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes per 1 minute of video. For videos requiring redaction throughout, staffing is spending 2 to 4 hours per video. With a full department-wide deployment, the ability to have up to 5 cameras at a scene as a request for one case has potential to multiplying the current time spent by 10 to 20 hours for one request. Program, maintenance, troubleshooting, assisting officers have been averaging about 2 hours per day of the staff time. In order to have a successful body worn camera program, one of the main goals is transparency and accountability to the community. We need to have the staff to be able to fulfill the records request in a timely manner.
Jeff, so what are the terms of our contract with Motorola?
Right now, we're under contract. We've been working with Greg's office to look at the contract to make sure that they're in compliance. They're beta testing a lot of things with us during our contract period, which is troubling. We're up and running with full deployment. We decided to go to full deployment as of October 1st to make sure that we're working out everything on our side.
Basically, it's a 5-year agreement that was entered into for both the equipment and the software.
What kind of, I imagine there was a process, some technology that would allow for more efficient processing of those videos that would save staff time. What would that look like in terms of our current contract, or maybe getting something in addition to that so we are not burdening staff? And I mean, you're asking for full FTE for something that AI should probably be able to take care of.
Yes.
Okay. Julie Hubert from the police department is on the line. Julie, did you want to say something?
I do. I just wanted to address that question. We actually already do have a secondary software to assist with audio video redaction that is AI technology. It is more efficient than the one from Motorola and in research from other more established companies. So the statistics that the chief read do come from using that AI technology.
You're saying from the new AI, not the Motorola AI?
Yes, it's a different vendor.
We've been using the AI technology all along. As we have been testing out Motorola's software, but as of yet, it isn't as efficient.
The problem with it is we have juveniles that we have to blur out if there's a juvenile. So 5 juveniles are in the video. We have to spend time doing that. If you pick somebody's body and then it goes to the next frame, it starts to go over. So there's a lot of redaction purposes that we have to look at for, you know, suspects to victims to, there's a lot that goes into redacting a video. And it's frame by frame.
Yeah, it's a time consuming process regardless of the,
Yeah.
regardless of your AI software, simply because of the state requirements for what can be released and what can't be released and what needs to be redacted and so forth. It's a universal problem with body worn camera systems. With public records requests, knowing what you have and how to do it. It's a high cost of business, but it's one that's not going to go away anytime soon with that sort of equipment.
Let's move forward from that discussion.
Actually, I have one. So thank you, Jeff. So I guess for me, and I maybe you're gonna already speak this, Jeff. I think the top priority for me, and I'll just be blunt with this, we need to have 4 officer minimum for our staffing. Probably the biggest complaint I get is that we only have 3 officers at any given time at a minimum. And a city our size, that's just not acceptable. And I realize that's not something that's your fault or anyone's fault. It's a industry-wide challenge. But anything that we could do from an HR perspective or from a funding perspective to make sure that we are providing that minimum level of service to provide the safety that our citizens deserve. And the mayor alluded to earlier, let's make that happen.
Follow up on that a little bit, Chief, based on national averages, where should we be at as far as officers per 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever?
So the national average right now is about 2.2 officers per 1,000. The state of Washington is about 1.47. Right now, currently, we're at 0.90.
So a minimum of 4.
Well, we gotta start somewhere.
No,
Yeah.
You can't even fill the funded FTEs.
No, I get that, but I guess I'm saying maybe we should aspire for a higher number.
Let's get to 4 and then let's move from there.
So to get to 4 on duty officers, not counting the sergeant, you've got to be at what, 7 per team?
Just about. Because of right now I have 6 open positions. I have 2 on extended leave, and that doesn't include the training requirements that we have to go through given the current legislation. That's why you look at 2024 and the request we asked for 2 additional officers due to the increase of calls and a 4-man minimum due to legislation, city growth and mandated training. We also asked for an increase in traffic officer as we have 1, but it's vacant right now. We got a big increase of calls, parking, traffic collisions, and traffic complaints, as you know, around schools in high volume areas.
So to go to 7, that we'd have to add 4 just patrol officers.
So where would that put us as far as our ratios? 1.2?
That would get us to 1.
Yeah.
I appreciate your comments, Steve, but I agree with those, but I think we need to focus more on upping our game, so to speak, in the sense that we are a growing community, and I appreciate it's hard to get people, but we need to, I think, be more aggressive, I guess, in getting more folks. And so I would encourage that we look down those paths.
I think especially because of the hiring difficulties, if we don't approve these into the budget until 2024, assuming it continues to be difficult, those positions may not get filled till second or third quarter 2024. And then if they have to go to training, it may not be 2025 before they're actually, active. So I would agree. I think given the amount of time it takes to actually get these positions, these people on the street, I would be supportive of being more aggressive.
So by being more aggressive, then do we move the 2024 is up to the 2023 budget and move things up in a cycle so that we're.
I would like to see the whole picture first before saying yes, but.
So your picture looks down and to the right faster.
Yep.
Council.
That's your picture. Just
Yeah.
a simple picture.
Councilmember Jorstad, just to answer your question regarding the training. Right now, I was talking to the chiefs today at an event that Mayor and I were at. Right now, it's March 2023 before they can get even to their next academy.
Okay, thank you. Is there any sense that is there any work being done to have that be quicker? Later?
Yeah, they're working. Senator Lovick made a plan to make regionalized training, but the unfortunate piece is there's no funding to it yet. So it has to go through the 2023 legislative process.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
So your constraint on that, I don't want to get into a deep conversation on this, but your constraint on that's going to be, you can go regional, but then we're gonna need
How many more
we're gonna need a
trainers? you're
training
gonna-
officer from Lake Stevens PD, we're gonna need a training officer
Totally.
from, and then that takes away people off the street.
Yep, I get it.
Chief, recognizing that the national kind of bar is 2.2 per thousand. That puts us somewhere around 88 officers. How realistic is that number in a 5-year time frame?
Not realistic at all, given the current candidates that I've been getting and the amount of applicants. Right now, we have that lateral incentive for out of state and in-state laterals. I have gotten one out of all that.
That'd be higher than 45 officers-ish.
Yeah, that'd be doubling the staff.
That'd be a steep down to the road.
Kim has his hand
It's just a question.
I know.
Kim?
I'm about to start to shake.
I'm a numbers person.
I know you are.
That's the
I know you
question.
are.
I can talk about span of control for you there, Sean.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Kim?
Yeah, just to be clear then, what we're talking about here, you're saying that we need 7 per crew, not including the police sergeant. So it'd be 8 per crew.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that because I got a little bit turned upside down on the numbers there for a second. I tend to agree with Angie. I've always agreed with this point of we need to get busy early on the police officers. Public safety, like the mayor said earlier tonight, is number one. And we definitely have some issues that we need to take care of. So I'm all for trying to get them in 2023 instead of 2024.
Yeah.
I concur.
All right, I think, Chief, are you done?
Sure.
Okay. All right, Anya, who's next?
Director Halverson.
Okay, in 2023, the Public Works Department is contemplating reclassifying all crew worker 1s and 2s into just crew workers with incentive pay based on training, certifications, licenses, and negotiations for that are in progress. The advantage of that system would be a crew worker 1 getting their CDL. They wouldn't have to wait for a crew worker 2 opening to operate a truck. They could begin operating that truck immediately. It's a big advantage to Public Works. Okay. Also, the establishment of a Public Works analyst position to lead or support special projects. As you know, Public Works has several special projects that are underway, including the APWA accreditation, ViewWorks redeployment. ViewWorks is the geospatial asset management software. We are working through some sewer district assumption efforts and Public Works budget tracking, capital project tracking, and process improvements. Okay. In addition, establishment of a shop quartermaster to provide tool control and general inventory asset management. We have a large crew of field employees. Ensuring that they operate efficiently in the field will improve service levels. The quartermaster would ensure that they have the tools they need and the consumables they need to leave the shop once to do the job in the field and not run to the hardware store or go to Home Depot and come back to the shop in the meantime, waiting to actually do the work that needs to be done that day. Okay, and finally, in 2023, reclassify the administrative assistant to a senior administrative assistant to supervise the current office assistant and perform higher level admin work. You have a public works department that is improving in its professionalism. We have more employees than we've ever had. So we have more administrative needs than we have in the past. In 2024, we're considering asking for a fleet manager and a lead equipment mechanic for the increased workload with our fleet. We're again acquiring more vehicles, have more equipment, higher level of service, need to maintain those tools. Also, establishment of a field supervisor for facilities. Right now, facilities are maintained by the streets team, the streets facilities team. So we have one lead in streets. That lead can be pulled off to service the elevator, for instance, at the PD, and in the next moment be standing up a stop sign at an intersection. Those are competing needs. They're very different. They're very important, but the stop sign tends to take precedence, and we feel that. Okay. Also, establishment of another crew worker one in facilities to add to that division. Again, we have many facilities now. We keep building them. We keep acquiring them. We need to maintain them. 25, 26, establishment of a senior engineer to address the increasing workload of the city engineer. We have a steady stream of requests for traffic calming daily. And I'm not being hyperbolic, daily. It's constant. There is a very serious need there, but we also have 34 capital projects that are going to come before you. So we're trying to balance those needs. Traffic calming is very important, but so are the capital projects. 27 to 28, establishment of a traffic engineer signal technician. It's likely, it's certainly possible that the city's population will reach 50,000 in that time period, and we will be required to maintain our own traffic signals in terms of timing or just maintenance in general. And then TBD in the future, potential for a public works deputy director for operational oversight of capital projects, engineering, and the surface water management group, admin side essentially of public works. Any questions?
Aaron?
Thank you. Yeah.
Looking at the estimated cost of 2023 changes, you identify reclassifying all the crew workers, but on the cost of those changes, I don't necessarily see where those costs are accounted. I'm assuming that in the difference between crew worker 1 and 2, that is that's negotiated, there's probably a chance that all the ones become 2, and there's probably a pay difference associated with that.
Do you want to take that?
I'll answer that. Because we're in progress of negotiations, we're still working out costs. We haven't identified that for you with the incentives because we are under negotiation.
Okay.
Thank you, Aaron. It's well thought out.
Thank you.
All right, council, I'll talk about the needs of planning and community development next. So looking into 2023, one of the primary requests would be for an administrative assistant. For years, that's been one of the shortcomings of the department. And as it grows, and what this position would do would be help everyone across the board. So other staff aren't taking time away from their regular duties to do basic administrative tasks, everything from ordering, doing bill coding. And a big priority would also be someone that you already heard from the chief earlier to do records management. We don't have a specific records officer in our department, and we get a large amount of records requests, probably behind police and general city business. And so there would be a dedicated staff person who could facilitate those records requests. Other things that we're looking at really look at our internal staff, looking to reclassify potentially one of the senior planners to a lead planner And that would be more in the current planning side to give that person some ability to do some career growth, some supervision, delegation, things like that. And then also we've had a 0.6 senior planner for several years, and that person has suggested they would like to come back 100%. So we put that into the budget for next year, and that would be in lieu of asking for an assistant planner. So our staffing plan had projected an assistant planner coming on board this year. And so we wouldn't ask for that assistant planner and let this senior planner full-time position take up the slack that we might have had otherwise. Looking to the future, again, there may be a need for another assistant planner in the future. We'll continue to monitor the city growth and what we're seeing for different types of applications. We would also like to be able to create some career growth within our building inspectors. If you'll recall, last year, we asked the council, or this year, authorization to hire building inspectors, either as a building inspector 1 or a building inspector 2. As it worked out, the best fits came in as building inspector 1s. Both of those guys have been working hard. Both of them have achieved their first certifications. So it is likely by the end of this year, going into next year, one of them may be ready to step up to that more advanced building inspector 2 position. So just want to keep that flexibility, and like Aaron's suggesting, based on certifications, be able to reward people for achieving excellence. And then the final one, again, also looking at career progression. We have our current plans examiner. That person's been with the city starting as a part-time code enforcement building inspector, worked their way up to the plans examiner role. And again, as we look for career growth for this person, potential attrition, we might identify a deputy building official role or an inspector supervisor role in the future as this person progresses and gets some more certification. So again, these are on the horizon, not necessarily defined dates, but in 2024, just to recap, looking for an admin assistant, transferring a person to a lead planner role, and then bringing on a 0.6 to a full-time position. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Russ. So going on to the Parks Department. Before I talk about the proposal for this next year, I wanted to establish how Parks is continuing to be run as we transferred over to the Parks Department, independent from Community Development and Public Works. So that staff support will continue, and to define what that looks like, Parks heavily partners with Public Works for staffing. This includes use of their engineering team, their facility techs, which provide about 40% of their time to support Parks facilities and sanitation. Additionally, office and admin assistants will help with many of the admin functions, including the frontline for customer service, phones, accounting. And that is something that we have talked about and will continue at this time. Additionally, on the community development side, their admin support has been involved with the Parks Board, specifically with creating those agendas and attending the meetings and taking minutes. So that will continue for now. What we're proposing for 2023 and this next year is first to establish a park ranger. What this would look like is to help minimize the need from our regular maintenance workers to interact with the public, to remind on rules, to help reduce vandalism, create that public outreach, that interactive portion. It would also help reduce the need from lower priority law enforcement things, where right now we do have to call the police. There's a lot of stuff that could be done with the park ranger level. So they would have limited commission. They would be able to do parking enforcement and enforce rules of parks and really try to gain compliance. But then as things escalate, 911 would still need to be used. Of course, we'd have a back end line to get through to dispatch and to assess and escalate those as needed. The next position would be just a seasonal park worker, as that is where the most of our ongoing activity happens with the growth of vegetation and needing to manage that with cleaning facilities, with managing reservations for shelters and facilities in general. With this and continuing negotiations with Public Works will be on the same union agreement continuing. We will be, instead of calling ours crew workers, would be calling them parks maintenance workers. The future plan you will see is not addressed for future years. That is because it will need to come with a 5-year plan that needs to be established so that I'm not just continually changing what this plan looks like for you guys. Likely we'll need more maintenance workers, especially as we continue to develop parks, acquire parks from county or other sources, and develop ours. Additional seasonal, I can see needing. We don't always need the extra help in the winter, but summer can get quite busy. As we continue to grow, we may also look at an admin person specifically to focus more on grants and continue to fund programs. Any questions at this time?
Kim has his hand up. Steve.
Yeah, I'm assuming that you're going to be putting in your budget request a vehicle for the park ranger.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Horse. That'd be fun. Clydesdale.
Sarah, does the funds that are generated from our facilities, like the mill here, does that go into the general fund or back into the Parks Department now?
Currently, it does go to the general fund, and I had planted a small sentence in one of my emails to Barb that just said, in the future, I'm gonna be interested in tracking that. It's important to know, in the Parks Department, we refer to it as cost recovery, so that, you know, what do we generate revenue versus what does it take to run something like the mill or shelter reservations? And it helps justify any fees that we'd be charging to the public as well for renting those facilities.
So you made a suggestion or you're requesting that?
I will be working with Barb to isolate those in the future.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will say that Sarah has a cost accounting background, and so she is quite capable of tracking those costs. Okay, on to finance. As you can see from my conservative chart here, we are not requesting any staffing for next year. We do have a couple of accountants in the future 2024 to 2026 staffing plan that is to take care of things like budget analysis, treasury management, which is debt and investments, procurement, purchasing, potentially creating a procurement division within the finance department, working on inventory control, asset management. As Director Warrington mentioned earlier, the caveat is, you know, sewer district. If we do assume the sewer district, the finance department will be assuming a number of positions that we will be utilizing and reallocating and using those functions for these purposes as well. So at this point, we are not requesting any additional. You may have noticed in the org chart, we do have we have 2 half-time passport positions approved that council approved in 2022. Those have not been filled. As I mentioned during one of our previous council meetings, logistically, we're having trouble kind of putting this together. Where are we going to put them? How are we going to do this? And so we are still moving forward with that. A question for council is, do we want to continue establishment of this program? I know it was a big push when before Granite Falls actually had their passport program. Now I know a lot of our citizens go there. We would not be using it as a money-making process program. It would be obviously more for community development, community use versus any kind of funding option. With all of the requested additions to the general fund with police department, parks, that sort of thing, I'm not sure if it would be helpful to eliminate the $75,000 that was budgeted towards passports to go towards these other things. So something for council to kind of think about. As we mentioned, we don't have logistically a space for them in City Hall. So we'd be taking up conference room space, going through the trainings. We would need to obviously hire additional staff to take care of these issues. And so something to put out there for council. We have not finished establishment of this program. We are approved to be an acceptance agency, but we have not actually started doing any of the processes yet. And we have not, one of the things that we had considered doing was increasing one of our office assistant half-time staff to full-time to do the process and do the passports for those 3 days. It doesn't leave any room for backups, which is one of their requirements. So something to kind of think about in your process here.
Do you have any idea, other than Granite Falls, where the next closest, I mean, Everett, I guess. Yeah.
Everett, Mill Creek and Granite Falls are, they have a very robust program that is 7 days a week. They have multiple staff. They have a great, both of them have good secure areas for safety of their passport acceptance people. I know Granite Falls is actually setting up a like photo booth, which is like old timey photo booth in their facility. And so it's obviously space we don't have to do any of those things. If we do move forward, we are still not looking at doing photos. We won't be doing photos because we don't have space for it. And we will only be 2.5 days a week as we just don't have space. So.
Are the requirements for passport processing going to be changing in the future?
I have not heard that.
What are you thinking?
I thought that I had heard that they were going to be doing some streamlining in the sense of not making it so where you got to be in person. I'm not trying to think while I'm talking.
I know the renewals, you don't have to be in person.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, the renewals that you can send it in from home. You can just send in your current passport and information and the application and they'll process that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, the passport thing, I think we really need to put on hold until we can find space. We just don't have it. Just don't have it. And, to try to scrunch it in to the corner is just not gonna be a professional customer service oriented product that we want to put out.
And we have been pointing people to Granite Falls and that we get calls, you know, randomly, and they've been doing a pretty good job of marketing for the passport. So I know a lot of our staff actually go over there as well for their passports. So.
All right. For 2023, my staff priority needs that we are looking at here is to, on a side note, obviously we've been kind of down with positions, but we actually have 2 candidates that are highly qualified for the 2 open positions that hopefully we'll be getting offers out. Background check was done today on the system engineer. So as soon as I get feedback from the city, from the police department, I'll be able to make an offer letter and start those negotiations. And so hopefully those positions will be filled really soon. With that being said, even prior to that, when we did have the Carter on board and worked with a lot of the special projects, he always kind of felt overtaxed with trying to hit with kiosks and special projects and AV equipment needs with the PD that he just felt like he was just trying to have a hard time supporting the help desk, which is where all the small minutia takes place. And so some of the higher, heavier lifting stuff with the desktop configuration, security compliance, auditing and stuff like that is where the analyst is really going to focus on. And then the need for the help desk position is to kind of help us to be that primary point of contact to fill all those lower level stuff and allow our other senior staff to be able to focus on some of the higher projects and improvements to the infrastructure. So that's a position that we're looking at to bring on. And then with that, our application GS analyst, he's been heavily invested in like the GS infrastructure and getting things ready for parks and ViewWorks and what he's been somewhat managing some of our other online applications like Civic Rec and Civic Clerk and some of these different things to get our online payments, permit tracks to make all these services available to the public. And but really just not being able to focus heavily on some of those application administration. So what we're looking at doing is to kind of reclassify him to focus strictly on the GS infrastructure He'll be able to kind of cross train and support the application analyst position that we're looking to bring on. Before, I brought this before, and when I was looking at getting the other positions, but that was, we wanted to wait till this final staffing plan here. So that application analyst is someone that's going to be kind of taking on some of these enterprise applications, integrations with other systems. We're looking at so many initiatives with IoTs and smart city initiatives. We're gonna need someone to be able to drive these projects. So that's really what those two positions are. And then obviously, as things continue to grow, we got these different divisions that we're trying to support our needs in 2020 or 24 to 26. I'm looking at adding an operations manager. That's going to be a person that's going to kind of oversee the divisions, the projects, project management with them, and kind of keeping things, on task, helping to manage a budget. I spend so much time just trying to procure equipment and get things deployed. It's just, and someone else will get handle that. So I did reach out to, I was asked to check out with the Snohomish County to see if there's any kind of IT support that we can bring on with the county to help some bandwidth with us. And JD is the director there. He was saying that they're just so swamped, and they have so many people that have outstanding time off requests that they're just trying to struggle to keep the different cities that they're supporting. So he was like, yeah, I can't afford any kind of bandwidth for you to provide that support. So I was like, okay, well, that's where we're at. So we're just needing to get that additional, staffing on here as we continue to, scale out and meet the city's needs. So, any questions?
All right, moving on to HR. No position requests for 2023. The only thing that I foresee in the future so far is a safety or emergency management coordinator under the risk manager. Currently, the new risk manager handles all the claims and risks and liability questions. They're the delegate for WCIA. They are also the emergency manager. They are also the safety coordinator, and it's a very large job. They are also right now the project manager for APWA accreditation. So I just foresee right now we have a contract with NWFF safety program. And once we are done with that, we might look at hiring a full-time FTE to handle one of those umbrella duties, whether it's safety side of coordination or the emergency management side, to help relieve the risk manager. It's not on the org chart, but I want to point out that under 2023 in budget requests, I've submitted a budget request for an internship program for up to 4 internships funded through salary savings or possibly unpaid for 2023. And this would be for all city departments. I just kind of put it under my department to highlight, to just let you know that this is in the budget request. This would provide some opportunities for the city to pipeline students into city government work, and also have some extra assistance during the summer months or the 12 weeks of the internship program. We have had candidates reach out to us in the past if internships are available, and I've discussed this with finance to see how we could fund this without taking a hit on like reserving salaries, and maybe we use with our new way of funding our FTEs, maybe we can use salary savings to fund those if available.
There are additional programs. We discussed that a little bit today. There, Washington Finance Officers Association has scholarship programs for internships as well for interns. And so if we have a program set up for that, we can likely reach out to some of those and draw in and utilize some of those funds as well.
Any questions on the HR side?
Hi. First of all, the internship program sounds like a fabulous thing and a great way for young people to get involved and figure out how to work for their city. But also, I would love to have you address, and I did talk to Anya about this. I'm not springing this on her, okay? Address for everybody to look on page 103 of our packet, if you would. And Anya, I called Anya and I asked her, because we were trying to figure out what this means. What's a quintile for one thing? It's like Chinese to me. I don't know what a quintile is. But Anya, I said, is this good or bad for our employees? These two current pay levels and employee current pay levels? Because I couldn't figure it out. So would you mind talking about that a little bit?
We're not quite there yet. We're still in the staffing plan and we're going to head into the salary survey discussion and we're not quite there in the PowerPoint. We'll get to that page though, and I'll make sure
Okay,
we
good.
discuss
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks.
Okay, for the executive staff, we're not looking at any wage for 2023, but in 2024, we'd like to add a public record specialist. In the back of that PowerPoint slide, we talked about the JLARC report. 2021, we filled 1,351 requests for a total of 848 hours of staff time that was recorded. That cost was $138,500. So the need is there. Public records requests are not going away. It's vast. It's a tremendous amount. So that would be the request in 2000. Questions? So Gene, what are you going to do to reduce the public records requests? Not going to work.
Don't send an email.
No more.
Don't call anybody.
Good.
We're
we
going
got it.
paperless.
Okay,
Yeah.
paperless.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, the next slide is just a recap. If the staffing breakdown plan is adopted in 2023, this would be our new FTE count. In the second column would be at 128. And the number of future FTEs we would have through this plan would be 153.5. Next slide, please. And the question, I'm sure, is what is this going to cost us? There was, snippets on each slide of which positions and the salary costs. And those costs on those pages were salary and benefits. Those weren't including setup costs or vehicle costs or anything like that. For 2023, department directors did submit budget requests with those additional costs in there. So the finance director does have those. This slide just breaks down each position and the percent of allocation per fund approximately that we're looking at and the dollar amount. So you can take a look on the hit to the general fund versus streets, stormwater and permits. And this is if the entire staffing plan were adopted, and you can see the breakdown if you're looking for a specific position.
And obviously it does not include any additional officers or any of that discussion. It's just as presented.
Any questions on this slide?
I do have a question about the public records person for Gene. Why is it zero? Total cost is zero.
Because we're not going to fill it in 2023, so it doesn't cost anything. It still
Oh,
costs.
okay, got it. Sorry. 2024. Okay, got it. I missed that.
Questions in general over the strategic staffing plan before we move on to the next topic? Okay. So next we are going to go through the non-represented salary survey, and there is a lot of data in these slides. So please feel free to stop me, and I am going to do my best to go through these and highlight the important information. So next slide. So since we've met last, the Compensation Connections and I have met and done various tasks. So we've evaluated the internal equities. We looked at compression between supervisors, managers, line staff in every single department, every affected job class. We also looked at similar job class matching and analysis. So for example, we looked at the admin assistants that are in various departments and made sure they're classified in the same grouping. And same thing with like accountants. We have several accountants that do different functions and they are in the same level, class level. We also looked and addressed any outlier data. Sometimes when you're pulling data, we looked at the matching data and we reviewed it all, we fine-tuned it, and we did perform additional custom research if there were not enough matches for those positions. And we also looked at the salary schedule of our current city salary schedule and looked at potential tweaks to the salary schedule for cost effectiveness. And we also added the new staff that were hired since July. So this slide, this next slide just shows you a similar slide that you saw in the last presentation with updated numbers based on all of those updates on the last, what I just went over. And this is your average of the current grade to market in each of the requested percentiles. So the 60th percentile and the 75th. So as you can see, if we're looking at comparison to the 60th percentile of the market, the grand total is that city staff are down about 9.2% from that 60th percentile mark. And the same for the 75th, we're at 85% to the 75th market. So we're down about 14.5%. Any questions so far? The next slide, I'm not going to really go over, but this just gives you a snippet of all the positions that we looked at in the salary survey by department. And then the next slide. This one is the overall city picture. So the employees' current pay levels compared to the market. So this is broken down in quintiles, and quintiles are they're fractions. You know, a 1/5 is the first quintile. 2/5 would be the second quintile, and goes on. So what this means is when you're looking at it, if our implementation strategy, if our choice is to target the 60th percentile of the market, the pie chart underneath shows that about the third quintile, that's like your average of the 60th percentile. We have 17 people that are about meeting that 60th percentile, and everybody in the blues, so 20 people are below that. And then we do have a few staff that are above that 60th percentile. And then if you look at the 75th, if our target is the 75th percentile, 67% of our staff are below that mark. So the next slide, okay, cost of salary survey by department. I know Councilmember Tagent asked for a further breakdown in costs by department and looking at dollars. And so this kind of gives us another version of what we saw last time. This is by the 60th percentile and gives you the annual current pay and each implementation type that we're considering and what the cost would be by department in dollars and percentage of increase of pay. And then on the right, I slid in a little column there with how many employees per department. So you could see there on the right-hand side, how many employees that department covers.
Anya, can you help me understand the difference between sum of dollars to the next closest step compared to sum of dollars to current step?
So later in the slides, let's see, I highlight at the bottom the definitions again, because I knew
Okay.
this would get.
Sorry, let me.
No, that's okay. So the question was the highest, the next step versus the minimum?
Current step to, yeah, next closest step to the current step.
So the current step is if I'm at step 5 in the current salary schedule and I'm in range 70, then I'm going to go, and if to get to the 60th percentile, I need to move, we're going to move the range to, for my job class to 72. Then I'm going to move to step 5 in range 72. So that's bringing them to the current step that they currently are at
Got
in
it.
the new range.
That makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Versus moving them up a step, but keeping the same range.
So the other one you were wondering was the next closest step.
Mm-hmm.
So the next closest step would be in dollars. So we would look at how much they're getting paid in their annual salary and look at the new salary schedule and where their new position is slated in that new salary schedule and place them at and round them up to the next closest highest step.
Got it.
That would be range 72. So you can still.
Yes,
move
you'd
that
still go
range
into that
to
range.
72, you just move it to that next closest.
Okay. Thanks.
No problem. So the next slide is the same, but for the 75th percentile. So I'll just let you take a look at that and ask any questions. Okay, if you're ready, we'll just move on. So what I've done here is I've broken down there's 4 implementation methods that we presented to council. The first one is years in position. So the definition is on the bottom. This places the employee on the step based on their years in their current position. So for example, if I just received a promotion into a new position, then the calculation would be based on how many months or years I've been in that position. So I'd be slated at year 1. If my new range, in my new range, I would go to step 1. Or the next, bringing them to their minimum though. We would not like take back any pay, would not decrease their pay. It would be the next highest step. So under this percentile, or under this implementation method in the 60th percentile, this is what the cost would be. The current annual salary budget is over 5 million. The proposed increase for that would be 359 million or 359,000. And the proposed total increase in salaries would be 7.2% over the current salary budget. And this breaks down by allocation by department for you. Kind of try to slide in as much as I could into these slides so you could see how that would affect each department, because it's not just straight general fund for all these positions. There are some allocated to streets, surface water, and permits. So same thing, if you look over the 75th percentile, the cost of that goes up to 563,000 some change, and the increase would be 11.2%. In the next method, bring to current step, 60th percentile would cost an increase in salaries of 704,000, and it would be an increase of 14%. This method, just to refresh, is what we just mentioned. It maintains the current step placement of each employee, and this is the one that is referred to in city policy. If you look at the 75th percentile of the market, the proposed increase is over $1 million, and the increase in salaries is about 21%. Okay. The third method is next higher step, and this one is anyone whose pay is between steps will move to the next higher step. And that includes bringing them to the step 1. The increase for the 60th percentile in salaries would cost 261,000 and some change. And the increase percentage is 5.2. For the 75th percentile of the market, the increase in salaries would cost 405,000, almost 406,000. And the percentage is 8.1% in increase of salaries. That brings us to our last method, is bring to range minimum. This would bring anyone with pay below the new step 1 of their range, they go to step 1. So that would mean, just to give you an analogy of this one, if I get paid step 5 in range 70, but I'm moving up because the market study says I need to move to step or range 75, but my pay is equal to step 1 of the new salary range, then I move to step 1. I don't go to step 5 or anything like that. I would just go to the range minimum.
As does everyone else who's on step 4, 3, 2, or 1, go to step 1.
Right.
So it doesn't take into consideration any years of service.
Right. So that 60th percentile, the cost of that would be 202,000, almost 203,000, and increase of total salaries of 4%. And for that 75th percentile, that would cost approximately 375,000 thousand, and it'd be an increase of 7.5% in salaries. So I'm gonna pause there, and I will go back to talk a little bit about page 103 in your packet, like Councilmember Dickinson wanted me to highlight that. What that shows us is the pie graph is that our staff are, most of our staff are below our target. So in the 60th percentile and in the 75th, even more so. So I did want to highlight for Councilmember Dickinson that that is an important fact there. And I was wrong. I think I was referring to orange was the mid, and it's actually the yellow. The third quintile is yellow colored. So anything that's yellow and to the right, so yellow, gray, orange, and blue are below the target. So in the 60th percentile, we only have 4 people above the 60th percentile of the market. And in the 75th, we have none. So I'd like to open it up for questions and discussion. I know the council had some discussions on years of service as an option and or years in position and the current policy, which is bring to current step. It was also seemed like a few council members were favorable of the 75th percentile of the market. And this kind of gives you the cost breakdown now. So I'd like to open up questions.
Just to be clear, none of the requested positions are factored into any of this data.
No, neither is a COLA.
Okay, thank you.
Which we will get to next. Would you like me to move on?
Well, Anya, this is
a lot of information, I know.
Yes and
no. Speechless, I'm
looking for the
I'm honored.
Marine Corps version of this explanation. Just saying.
Oh, here we go. I was actually going to ask if, in addition to this information, which is incredibly helpful and incredibly daunting, do we have any? I know that we frequently talked about turnover in positions, and I just wonder if there's any way to show how this has impacted our retention, and we talk about these pay ranges. Not because it has any bearing on my support for looking at how we can get closer to our targets, because I fully support that. Just curious to see where we are in retention overall, and just making sure that we're doing right by our staff. They do an incredible job for us, and we want to make sure that we keep people on board to continue to do all that great work and move the city forward.
If you're looking for a percentage, I don't have that. We do have a handful of resignations every year since I've been here. I would say a majority of those are for a better position elsewhere, higher pay, higher level of responsibility, career growth in general. As far as that being a factor in this, I guess yes, it does help with retention, but it also, I think, is just overall employee satisfaction and inflation and just the cost of living that doesn't seem to stop rising. So if you'd like me to get you some more actual statistics and data, I can bring that back to you or email that out.
No, I'm fine with the anecdotal. Obviously, you speak with people as they depart, so I'm good with that.
Okay.
But thank you for all of this. I don't have any additional questions.
I have a question. On any of these, it doesn't really matter which of the 4 we pick. What is the The problem that I see is that some of these are like the 20.9%. That's a huge markup in pay for 52 different people. Now, I don't think that, I think this actually goes to each individual person and it's different, right? So according to your pie chart, it's going to be different for those different percent or quintiles. Is that correct? Because you can't just take a direct average and say that, 1 point whatever million dollars and divide that by 52 and they're all going to get a $20,000 increase.
Yeah, so each position, so some of the positions, like if you look at the pie chart, if we chose the 60th percentile of the market and the 4 people in the green pie chart are already at the 60th percentile, then they get no adjustment. So that is factored into this, is it's by position, how we would adjust them. So the people that are in the blue are going to get a higher increase than the people in the yellow.
Okay, that's the way I understood it. Okay, good, thanks. If you just take the averages, though, it looks pretty bad. $20,000 a person.
Yeah, it's not an all across the board increase like a cost of living adjustment would be.
Right, okay, got it.
What I want to do is to use the 75th percentile and utilize years in position and give a COLA and approve all of the positions that were required. I don't do math like regularly in my job, but I don't see how that's possible. So I guess I'm wondering, I would love to see, is there a proposal or a recommendation or a like, here's how we can move the shelves around to sort of make this work and make all those things happen?
Well, that's a very complex question because the finance director and I have talked about this, and so is the mayor and the city administrator. And I think the mayor will propose the positions in his budget and some items. So there is that interacting at the same time. So we have looked at projections and, played with scenarios. We were basing most of our thoughts that you would choose years in position or the current policy. And in order to do that, we would have to get creative, I think. And I think Barb could probably be the better person to talk about the budgeting aspect of things. But we would definitely need to get creative to figure out how we could pay for all of these 3 large items plus budget requests. And
Here's an impossible question. Do you feel like, what do you think at this juncture is most important? Getting everybody whole in terms of salaries and bringing people up to where they need to be, or meeting the requests of the new positions for each department?
Well, without getting in trouble by anybody else, if you're asking my opinion.
I'm asking your opinion.
I think that we need to take care of our current staff. I think that adding positions is needed, and it's a need every single year. And I think we need to prioritize retaining and taking care of the staff that have been here through thick and thin for the city of Lake Stevens, and the new staff that are coming in and giving a lot of faith into the city and when working for us and making things right. This shows that we haven't had a salary survey for this group of 52 employees, which is half our staff, in over 8 years. And it's just time. So that's my personal opinion.
Does anybody have a differing personal opinion? Just curious.
That's always been my philosophy, hence why you see so many around people. Take care of your people first.
Yeah.
And I think I would add to that a lot of the requests that came through tonight were directly related to maintaining staff, growing staff. So reinvesting in our staff, maybe just some different ways to get there.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate your just being candid and transparent. It's an impossible task, and your information is super helpful.
So to simplify this, I think from Angie's point of view, I'm trying to take your point of view, Angie. What I think you're asking for is if you took these, let's just say we picked the 75 percentile. And those 4 different methods, you take that money, which is already right there at the bottom of each one, you add that money to the requests, and we have a bottom line for salaries, and then include after that, the COLA request, so that we have a bottom line number. I mean, trying to go back and forth between your slides and things, I've been doing it for the past 30 minutes, trying to figure this out. And so I'm really kind of thinking that we need a bottom line. It's going to cost this much money to bring these new people on, this much money to get it to the 75th percentile of the 4 different methods and the COLA. What is that number in the 4 different methods?
Councilmember Daughtry, that is a lot of forecasting. So what we've actually done on your last slide in this packet is actually show what the base would be with the cost of living. So we didn't go through the cost of living slide, which maybe we should actually just chat about that really quick. So Kelly, do you want to go back to the one just before that?
Yep.
So basically, when we talk about the cost of living, Director Warrenton and I had actually gone over this a couple of years ago and presented this to council as the rationale for our cost of living base amounts. And so just to recap that, the city has a history of doing 90% of CPIW, and we've been doing that for quite a few years. And as Director Warrenton had mentioned, the union represented job classes typically receive their regular market analysis in increases in addition to the COLA each year, each union contract period. And so this actually, cost of living obviously helps with retention and recruiting, and that keeps us in line, or attempts to keep us in line with our comparable cities. So one thing that Director Warrenton has found through her HR, her county-wide HR community, is that there are a number of comparable cities that are providing full CPI, which is 9.5% this year, or CPIU, which is 10.1%, which is actually just going to drop us further below our comparables. And so this is one of the reasons that we actually went ahead and put in our base budget the 8.6% for non-representative, but we have looked at other alternatives like a 5%, or as I believe it was Councilwoman Jorstad mentioned last week, is there a way we can step this, or can we do, you know, a percentage at the beginning of the year? Maybe we can do a percentage in the mid-year once we kind of look at, you know, contracts. But that we did pull that back out of the base budget amount to kind of get an idea of what exactly that 8.6% represented. And in the general fund, it is about $386,000 just for that 8.6%. We then knew that one of the things that Councilmember Daughtry had mentioned last week was looking at the 75th percentile instead of the 60th percentile. And so on the next slide, there's a line in here that is the base with 8.6% COLA with 60% years in service. And that actually almost equally almost equals a 75th percentile with a 5% COLA.
Oh, wow.
And so it's almost even depending on which direction you want to go with that. We have not run the numbers on 75th percentile with the 8.6 yet. We can definitely come back with that. But this slide shows you, I know it's my scary doom and gloom graph, I know, but the second to the last line in the table is your 8.6% COLA with 60% years in position with the FTEs that were presented tonight. And as you can see, in 2029, we have $16,000 left in the general fund. And that's not just general fund, that's also the contingency fund, which we put the construction sales tax money into, which we consider one-time revenues, which we try not to utilize for operating. We try to utilize for one-time park purchases or, you know, things along that line. But this also, you haven't seen any of the requests of the FTEs, and there are about $2.5 million worth of requests this year, just one-time requests that the mayor and city administrator and I sat down today and kind of started whittling through and looking at what we can do. But as you can see, that last line is the biggest doom and gloom. We're in the whole $5 million by 2029 in the general fund if we went ahead and approved all these. So obviously we cannot.
What, and tell me what all requests is again?
The all requests is the FTE requests and all of the item requests, not including capital projects,
Okay.
which Director Halverson mentioned there's
34.
34.
Right.
And I believe about $10 million for 2023, not including roll forwards from the prior year. So,
Okay.
So those requests include everything from professional service contracts, design things to equipment. A lot of equipment for, public works. It also includes the discussion with the take-home vehicles for the police department. All of these things are included in this at that point. So obviously this is just a big, hey, look at, this is everything that's been requested. This obviously it can't happen. This is kind of where we're trying to figure out where does council want to be and then where can we actually get them.
But we want the curves to go up exponentially.
A prior mayor asked that too. And so I actually just flipped the chart. And so they actually did go up, but it still meant the same thing.
So on the budget comparisons chart here, does that include anything about our income going up, or is this what's the income portion of this? Are you static at the income of this year? And this is what would happen if we stay at that income?
No, this includes all of our increases every year based on our estimated on property tax, our estimated, I believe it includes a 6% increase in sales tax, which is, it's pretty high. It's not we used to call it conservatively optimistic. It's a little more optimistic than conservative at this point. So 6% increase plus Costco, plus ancillary, additional others, retailers that come in because of Costco. And so this does include all of those, as well as an estimated amount for annexation dollars, which came out of our annexation study that we had done previously. That would include any utility taxes and that sort of thing as well. So it does include all of those things for revenue projections as well as expenditure projections.
Well, thank you for popping that balloon.
I need 2.5 money trees per 1,000 residents. If I could get that, we can fund everything.
So I guess just one other thing to add to that, Kim, to pour salt in your wound. So I understand next year our guild contract is up. Marysville contract was 19.6% over 3 years. And so that's kind of a standard. So if we look at our biggest expense, which is law enforcement, and the number of FTEs, so these cost of living things look pretty small compared to what we're looking at with that next guild contract. So we should be mindful of that significant liability that's on the horizon.
And we will mention that this does not include Teamsters negotiation consideration at all. We do kind of have that in the background, as the majority of that will fall to street and stormwater fund, but there is a big portion now that Parks is completely separate. And so that will hit the general fund as well. And as the mayor likes to remind us, we don't know what the economy is going to do for the next few years based on how it's running right now. So we do need to be a bit conservative if we can.
Council President Ewing, I appreciate your comments in regards to the guild, because that was in the back of my mind. And excuse me, I mean, it's great to have all these calculations, what we would like to do and so forth, but I mean, they're obviously with that limitation and our limitations of income and so forth. I mean, that's going to dictate what we can do. So, I mean, it would be nice to do all these things as far as years in service and bring us up to current, but sometimes you can't really afford to do that. So the balancing act, I guess, needs to begin. And I think you mentioned we're also, the Teamsters is in the background. Is there any kind of timeline as to when that will be resolved?
I am actually anticipating it to go over into 2023.
So
at this point.
it's kind of a gray area that's going to be out there and that we just don't know, so. I think, in my opinion, it'd be nice to do all this stuff, but we need to be very cautious as to what, how we go about this, so.
It doesn't make sense to, increase cost of living, increase steps, increase ranges, and then 2 years from now have to lay off a bunch of people because our revenue just doesn't meet our expenses. So
I agree. I would just, it hasn't been said, so I'll take the opportunity. I think this is where we begin to have the conversation about calculated risk to look at other ways to generate revenue for our activities within the city.
what are your thoughts? Big sales?
I
Big sales at the tune to 2 to 3 million extra a year.
We got some great bakers in our city.
Yes.
Actually, I was thinking of revisiting, and it'll come up in the next topic item anyway. This might be a good opportunity to talk about a focus grant coordinator to amplify our pursuit activities of grant dollars. It gave us more flexibility for what we need to do.
Yeah, we can have that discussion now if you want to. On the grant, so. We talked about it with staff. One of the issues you're gonna see in the CIP that Aaron brings up is we have a lot of grant money currently that needs to get spent, and we're running out of bandwidth on people to help spend it. So, and we also have the discussion that we have some very talented people. Sarah, Russ, and Kim, who have great, not that no one else is talented, but they have some great grant writing skills as well. And so one of the things we talked about is, do you create as part of one of these positions that are asked for, someone who's that coordinator, but yet use our internal skills already to, we're still thinking through that discussion we had in DC on if there's a need for a full-time grant writer, and do we have the bandwidth if we go out and grab a bunch of money to then implement the money?
Right.
Which is a problem we're gonna have over the next couple of years with some of the money that we already have coming in. I don't want to scare away free money. But we just got to think through it, that we don't lose it because we didn't implement it also. So we'll keep thinking through that.
So I guess the other part of that, I mean, Sean, thank you for bringing that up. 20th Street and our industrial area are probably, and maybe I'm missing some of the two areas that have the greatest potential to increase revenue and services for our community. And so anything we can do to move that along and to improve those processes, to get that money in is going to be huge. We really have limited space in the city. But I'd love to see that. Do we get more revenue and support the services for the city?
Yeah, I'd like to see us revitalize the industrial area as well. We know what's holding that up.
Yeah. Well, I think what we'll do is I'll obviously bring a recommendation on these things and do whatever you want to.
What's that? What's your timeline?
Where we at for my recommendation, Barbara?
Hopefully next week.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of time left. We're gonna go.
Yeah, we go.
So how are you gonna have a recommendation when we don't have, style that for like public works Parks Department to make that happen? Or are you just doing?
You mean from their contract negotiations?
As far as like what they might need as far as maintaining the city if we contract stuff out or things like that.
Well, we just have to plan without that for now, and then if we get to that point after negotiations, then add it in.
And I hope your budget includes, I think as we discussed, the 2 FTEs for the police, the 2, that we move that up, as Angie stated, I mean, we don't move that up to 2023. I mean, it takes forever to get those people online, and the chief identified we only have 1 lateral.
You're talking the 2 police officers.
Correct. The 2 police officers, so that's, yeah, I mean, that I think is identified as the top priority for the council to make that happen. So if we were gonna limit the additional positions, that would be one that would be appropriate.
I think that won't cost as much in 2023 as we think, because we're not going to get the people.
Agreed. I mean, I think.
Ever the optimist.
Right? I think it was last year's budget where we had multiple positions that were, July 1 or October 1.
Yeah, mid-year.
So I'm assuming that's going to be the same.
And we could look at it.
Okay.
Yeah, let me look at it with staff.
Yeah, it's still a priority. I mean, it really is. Move it all to 2023, but the realistic outlook of that is history has shown us that we're not going to fill all those positions in 2023.
You never know, Kim. Things could turn around tomorrow.
No, I know. Now, I hope they do turn around, but yeah, I look at some of those savings that we might have will make, unfilled positions like we've had in the past.
Are there any further recommendations for the salary survey implementation? And COLA for the mayor's knowledge, I guess, for his budget?
I think where we're at on that is I'll make a recommendation between COLA, salary, survey, and then we'll see where the council wants to go.
Okay.
I guess I'll just say, as far as someone mentioned the representation, so I can tell you that the 2 largest unions representing state of Washington employees, which is not a fair comparison, but just to give you an idea, a 6% for 2023 and 4% for 2024 for the 2 largest representations for the state. So far below, what that doesn't mean that the Teamsters would negotiate something different with the city.
That's cost of living.
Cost of living adjustment, correct?
Anything else from staff?
Thank you, council.
Thank you.
All right, Smart Cities Conference recap. So I'll recuse myself. Any of our council member, I guess, a doctor too. Angie, Mary, or Sean, would you like to, I guess, Mayor, weigh in on what you believe from that?
Well, this is my first trip to DC as a part of the city contingent. And, I've been a part of conversations over the last couple of years debating the benefits of spending the money and investing time to go to DC. And I will say after this trip, I get it at a level that I didn't ever really understand before. I don't think you can until you're in those meetings. I was really kind of blown away by, our ability, and I think Mayor Gailey did a great job just sort of outlining what our priorities are and the things that we're really looking at, and the number of opportunities that were presented just on the fly. The number of grant opportunities, the different types of funding, the different contacts that we could be making here in our state with federal representatives to pursue different types of grants, and also the familiarity that exists with Lake Stevens and with the trestle. That was really great to hear and to see and to hear repeatedly Thanks for coming and talking to us. And it's really important that we know about what your priorities are. And there is money available and we want to help you. We want to help point you in the right direction. We want to help you get these things funded. We see the importance of, culvert replacement and bridge replacement and, even the Cedarwood Community Center. I think that was especially great to sort of see people kind of light up about like, oh, that's something we definitely want to be a part of and want to help your city improve. So I thought it was incredibly fruitful, both in the information and in that relationship building. So my 2 cents.
Well, what she said, absolutely. But also begging for money after tonight, I can see we were doing the right thing to be in there and connecting with people. And I think it meant a lot to our senators and to our representatives that we were there. And I think there's nothing like presence and speaking to issues and just having the opportunity to voice what we're doing here in our city. It's just an amazing experience for me. I lived in the DC area long ago, but this was just awesome. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. If people were here, I would be saying to all the citizens, thank you, because I know it wasn't free, but I hope it was worth it for our city because we needed to be doing that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that's already been said. And I want to give some credit to Councilmember Tadgett, who isn't here. He was always the voice of, we have to go out there. We have to go out there. This is how we get money for the city. And it was really, I think, vindicating to hear in each of the meetings with the congressional delegation. Every last one of them universally said, it's really important that you come out here and meet with us. When we met with the Department of Transportation, it's important that you come out here and meet with us. It was universally heard that we need to be there to be counted. So, with that, I'd certainly look forward to the next time that we have the opportunity to go out there. There are opportunities for community development projects that are specific project funding opportunities that we have access to as a city. And we may not have considered those things previously without making this visit. There are projects that we considered multi-year, almost aspirational projects that were sort of described in terms of, oh yeah, we could do that. That's not difficult.
That's a lot of money to you, but that's not a lot of money to us. I
Right.
think that was a direct quote.
Yeah, that's kind of where they were. But I also want to speak to the conference itself. I'd never been to a Smart Cities conference and really didn't know what to expect. And I don't know any other way to say it, but I kind of got my geek on. Yeah, I know. Me and the drone. I know, me and the drone. But a lot of the things that we've kind of heard mentioned anecdotally over the months and over the years from the mayor about different sensors and ways to provide security or surveillance or protect our infrastructure. I mean, the technology that's out there, certainly much of it is several years ahead of where we are, but the opportunity to foster that creative thought process and how those things could be implemented here to is really beneficial for us. I think for everyone there, we had lots of conversations about mesh networks and all the different things that can be done with a light pole, which is just fascinating.
Such as
Doppler radars to do things like vehicle counts or enforce speed zones, AI implementation over mesh networks in case there are failures in things like water systems or sewer systems. And the way that those things could be paired with software applications to have automated responses, possibly even automated messaging, deployment of drones to get early visibility of things if we have issues in the park after hours. Just really, I had a pretty long conversation with the one true drone representative that was there. And really it, aside from the drone, the things that you can do with the technologies that are out there are really only limited by creativity and imagination. So it was, I certainly look forward to going to the next conference because I was completely blown away by it.
Wasn't one of the things that Drone Day talked about was concentrated
Herbicide?
crop dusting and milfoil?
Yes.
Crop dusting. I don't say crop dusting. I'm too tired to figure out what the main word is. Concentrated efforts using a drone with GIS.
Yeah.
Aaron, there was a robotic truck that could drive around at night and fix the potholes. Right? Like with no people, just the truck, just driving around doing the work. So it was pretty neat.
So I just want to echo what Councilmember Frederick said for Councilmember Tadgett. I know he's repeatedly encouraged that, and I will say that I did not necessarily see the value. I was skeptical, but talking to at least a couple people that went for the first time, I was impressed with their takeaways, and I've been persuaded that I need to change my viewpoint on the importance of those things.
I would love to hear Gene and the mayor's just feedback, just because you've done this before. Are we just, we're just first timers and excited about?
Yeah, I felt it was beneficial to be there at a different time than all the other cities. BWC days are very, NLC, excuse me, it's very busy. We got personal attention this time. I think it's my 12th year going, and I've never had such an incredible experience.
Who did you meet with?
Many of the same staff that we've met before, even at United States Department of Transportation, but they remembered us and they had more time for us. And then we did meet personally with Susan Delany as well.
And Representative Larson. Did you have a picture with him?
No.
Just his sign.
Oh.
I would echo that. I think that we pay dividends to go off season from all the other cities going out there, because Monroe next, let's see who's next, so we did have some more time, I think. And then the Smart Cities Conference was an interesting conference. It was kind of a high level conference. The exhibit hall wasn't as robust as I wanted it to be. I would make the recommendation, if you really want to see some of the latest, greatest geek stuff that's out there, it's that CES conference. And they have a whole conference floor, just smart cities. And
The one in Vegas.
One in Vegas. That one is, you'll get super duper way too smart on smart city stuff. And, it's a great conference.
Is there a reason why we need to wait for a specific conference to go back there? Why can't we just pick a date in November and go?
To meet with congressional folks?
Right.
There's no reason why we can't.
I mean, we've always used the excuse of NLC or like smart
I
cities.
think packaging it was some sort of, so one of the problems, well, I think packaging it with some sort of an informational conference makes sense. For me, I'm not a big NLC fan because I don't think it's geared towards bigger cities, right? And so I don't think that informationally and learning, education wise, we don't get bang for buck from NLC. Personal opinion, take it for what it's worth. That's why like a Smart Cities Conference back there, where you're coupling some education in some areas that we don't have expertise in, with taking a day or two, day and a half days like we did to go see congressional folks. I think citizens get bigger bang for buck out of us going by getting, because flights are expensive and hotels are expensive. So if we can grab additional knowledge in areas we're not comfortable in and meet with council members. I think that's why I think I suggest going out for conferences, but not NLC.
But overall, I mean, to Gary's point, I mean, the ROI, I mean, if you say we spent $20,000 to get people out there and we get millions in return, it's a no brainer.
Yeah.
And so to Gary's point, I think Gary's point is well taken. But we should be looking at those opportunities to find the best time when we can meet with the most people and have the best return on our investment. Because really, I mean, $20,000 drop in the bucket if you get $1 million or 2 million or 5, whatever it is. I mean, the multiplier is huge. And that relationship, I mean, Susan Delbene is going to be our rep as long as she wants. And so having that relationship with her and others in positions like her, to me is a no-brainer. It's nice that she comes here and we meet with her here, but also meeting with her and her staff on her own turf is a smart thing to do. So I also just want to thank our clerks. They did an outstanding job of setting things up.
Absolutely. Nice job, Caitlin. Thank
So
you.
that was super helpful. And I had to cancel my things, and they were helpful with me to help with my cancellations that I changed in circumstances. And so they were great working with that. So I hope that
100% Caitlin. All the time. She's gonna become a travel agent on our side business.
so if there's something we can do, Mayor, I mean, I agree with that. We can put it forward, but I don't see any reason why, even if we went just as a standalone. And a couple of our council members that are self-employed indicate the end of the month is not great. So I think we should accommodate their schedule so we can be inclusive and make sure that it's that everyone that can go is able to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, we'll take a look at this next year. The other thing is I threw in some words for the legislative breakfast that we're trying to get some traction, have them here as well. So threw in some, hey, we'd love to have you out again this next year or there. So, but we'll look at this next year's calendar and see what we can schedule.
Right, draft agenda, Gene.
Draft agenda for October 11th, 2022. For mayor's business, we have proclamation for National Library Week. Under department reports, we will update you on council pictures. We have first time on that. We have consent agenda, action items, we have fees resolution. Short-term rentals is tentative. The Heisley.
Hissy.
Good. Rezone request is tentative, and then we have budget discussion. Executive session needed.
And short-term rentals, I think will not. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the fee resolution is tied to that. And the rezone is going.
And we have an executive session still tonight, right?
And
Let's
one
do it.
additional thing, based,
Where's the
Kelly,
most
3 hours
monsters?
for the executive session.
With potential action.
Mayor, we may also move the budget request to the 18th since you're out the rest of the week and then Jean's out next week. So we might move that to the next council meeting. Just let council know that.
Okay, as long as we have time. If not, I can always jump on Teams.
Executive session. So we have two topics tonight, potential litigation and collective bargaining.
Just collective bargaining.
Oh, just collective bargaining? Okay. Chief, how long? do you need?
And there's no,
I think 5 minutes.
and there's no action to follow, right?
No action, correct?
No.
Do you want to say 5 or 10?
Workshop.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna recess to executive session for collective bargaining for approximately 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, Kim, can you hear us?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Hey, Kim, how's the speaker for the executive session? Did that work out okay for you?
That was fine for me, yeah.
Okay. Okay. so-
Except I tried to undo my mic and jumped out instead.
That's just operator.
Yep, it was.
All right, so with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Bye.
And we are adjourned.
Bye.
Bye.